If CNN really cared about our soldiers, they would have been more critical of Bush's excuses before the war started.
On the other hand, Stephen Kastner's short experience in Iraq is a telling reflection of how a war in its 5th frustrating year has strained the Army to its breaking point, forcing 3rd, even 4th deployments, stressing equipment, and leaving an alarming number of active duty and National Guard units rated not ready for combat.
5 years into a warfight, you're putting a lot of extra hours, a lot of extra miles, a lot of extra demands on your equipment.
And probably the more recent ones are...
Major General Dennis Hardy, the Deputy Commanding General of Ground Forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, worries most about a mounting physical and psychological toll unique to this war.
Some of the injuries that we're suffering over here, though, concussions, the effects on the brain, it's a lot less obvious in terms of what the impact and what some of the effects are.
2 single bell lines.
To understand the true cost of this war, we travel to the front lines in Iraq, support bases in Kuwait, and a handful of Army and National Guard installations stateside. A visit to Stephen and Kay Kastner's home north of Milwaukee
Not a day goes by, but I wish I...
brings you face to face with the ultimate price of war and the questions that cloud their morning.
I think that the situation was a classic example of using National Guard troops who were not prepared in any sense.
Questions about exactly what happened after their son's last photo.
I don't feel that somebody calling my son a hero answers my questions for me. I want the Army to tell us what happened.
This part is not in dispute. An explosively fired projectile pierced Kastner's Humvee, causing it to careen off the road and into a ditch. Kastner was wounded, yet the convoy kept rolling north for at least 10 minutes, more than 20 by some accounts.
They didn't know how to react. They didn't know how to respond. They didn't take care of their own.
It was at least 35 minutes before comrades returned and called for a medevac helicopter. Stephen Kastner's breathing was initially reported as strong, but 30 seconds before landing at an Army field hospital, Kastner went into cardiac arrest.
The cause of death was he bled to death, so the time was critical.
Stephen Kastner was 27.
His dad thinks that his son died in a raw deal. He thinks, number one, that he didn't get good training.
There is nothing that we could have done in training that would have prevented the loss of Stephen Kastner.
Lieutenant General Stephen Blum, the commander of the National Guard, told CNN the confusion after the IED attack was a sad example of the fog of war.
The only way I can make that whole for his father and his family is to re-roll the tape and make the IED not go off and the casualty not occur, and the loss, the painful loss for his family just didn't happen. I cannot do that. No human being can do that.
An Army investigation of the incident said the commander kept the convoy moving because a radio check found all gun trucks were mission capable.
In other words, he would have said B-12, and B-12 would have said present or something in more military terms.
Kastner's Humvee was truck B-41. Its radio was destroyed in the blast. An officer in the unit, in a letter to Kastner's father, wrote there was one more Humvee than normal attached to the convoy that day. So when the count came back, they thought they had everyone and continued to move north. The questions make coping harder. The Kastners tended their farm while pressing the Pentagon to reopen the investigation. The Pentagon says it has provided as much information as it can. But Kastner says the Army refuses to give him copies of the radio logs and refuses to say whether the commander now concedes he forgot how many Humvees were in his convoy.
It's consistent with other reported cover-ups of combat fatalities over there.
Cover-up's a strong word.
It's a very strong word. There's absolutely no other explanation for it.
A Up next,
Two Hodges, right side.
a night on the edge with an army stretched thin.